What's up, everybody? It's your man TZ, and I'm coming to you with a word, man. A lot of times before I start these videos, I get down on my knees and I ask the Lord. I say, Lord, is there anything that you want me to speak to these people specifically? Or I'll say something like, Lord, what what do people need to hear? Or I search inside myself and say, man, what do I have to give to people? Because right now, from the outside looking in, there's probably like 5 views on these videos a day, which is cool. Hopefully I'm providing value to 4 or 5 people. But to me, I take this very seriously, man. I take serious the calling on my life to give of what the Lord put inside of me. That's something that I'm not willing to compromise with. I know that's one of the things that the Lord put in me. So even if it is only one person watching these videos, or if it's 1 million people watching these videos, man, it's what I'm supposed to be doing. So it matters. So I asked the Lord. I say, Lord, what is something that people need to hear? And one thing that I was thinking about today, I had a conversation with my brother-in-law, and we were just talking. Conversation was a little bit all over the place, and he said he said a cliche. He said a very, very renowned quote, and the quote is this. He said, "Life is not a sprint. Life is a marathon." Now, I just wanna preface my statements with this, and this is something that I'm guilty of, and I think a lot of people may be guilty of. People have a tendency to bypass what is familiar. Okay? And a lot of time, the answers, okay, that may seem hidden, a lot of times the cues and the keys of life are hidden behind something that's familiar. Okay? Now, for instance, when something is out of place, it's easily identifiable. Like if you walk into your living room every day and you know how your layout is, right? Well, if the couch was on the opposite side of the room and the TV was on the opposite side of the room, and that family portrait that's usually over on this side of the room is now on this side of the room, it's like that's easily identifiable because this is an unfamiliar setup, right? So a lot of times people have a tendency to digest and give their energy to what is unfamiliar. But on the other end of this statement, uh, we bypass the familiar, okay? We push that aside. We don't give that as much attention, okay? Naturally, that's just what we do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, you know? If it's not, if if it's not broke and got an emergency alarm beeping on it, I'm not gonna give it any attention. I'm not gonna worry about it. Well, a lot of times, man, maybe what you need to hear is hidden behind something that's familiar. And you might have to pick something up that's familiar and search it and digest it. You know what I'm saying? And wrap your mind around something that's familiar. He said a quote that's familiar to probably most people. Everybody has heard the quote, life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. People have heard that a million times. I mean, how many runners, how many people that work out, how many people use that as an Instagram or a Facebook caption, right? We see that quote all the time. And so we bypass it. But what my challenge is to people and what my challenge is to myself, starting right now, is study the familiar. Digest the familiar. Okay? Because although that quote, life is not a sprint, life is a marathon, although it's familiar, and although it could go in one ear and out the other, if you really break that quote down, right, and think about it, it's insanely powerful. And if somebody can digest that quote and let it marinate on their spirit a little bit, it could bless you, right? See, on the surface value, that quote might be worth 1 penny. But if a man will latch himself onto that quote and spend some time with that quote and take some time to digest that quote, he could probably get $1,000 out of that quote. If he apply the wisdom that he gets from the quote. So life, with that being said, life is not a sprint. Okay? Some things just gonna take some time. Some things are going to require some perseverance. Some things are gonna require what looks to be like failure. You know? Some things we go through, it's not always gonna be pleasant, and we're not always gonna get our end goal right when we want it. So if we can truly have the fact that life is not a sprint and the fact that life is a marathon, if we could have that engraved in our heart, then what it will do is it will unlock peace along our journey, okay? Because adrenaline, okay? Adrenaline is utilized in short bursts. Adrenaline is best utilized in short bursts, okay? If you're running on adrenaline all the time, you're going to be exhausted and it's going to wear your adrenal glands out, right? So adrenaline is best used in short bursts, hence for a sprint. But peace is best utilized for a marathon because it's the long game. There's going to have to be short bursts in the marathon. There's going to have to be rest in the marathon. There's going to have to be a time to stop and reflect. There is reflection in the marathon. There is recovery in the marathon. There is planning in the marathon. There is a weathering of the storms in a marathon. Does that make sense? So for any endeavor in life, man, we must understand that life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. If you want to date a young lady, for my fellas out there, right? If you want to date a young lady, you see her in the grocery store and she looking all good to your eyes, right? Well, you can't just go and marry her right there. You can't walk up to the girl and say, hey, will you be my wife? You're probably not going to get much success doing that. So in order to get her to be your wife, to take her from some lady in the grocery store to be your wife, that is a marathon. You're going to have to do some dating. You're going to have to do some courting. You're going to have to prove that you're a man that's worthy of her spending her time on, okay? If she a righteous woman, you're going to have to prove to her that you're a righteous man and that you serve the Lord, okay? All that stuff take time, brother. That is a marathon, okay? My wife was not won over on day one. You know, it took months of effort. I had to write her notes, you know. I had to think of things to do, activities to take out on a date. You know, it was a daily pursuit, okay, to prove to her I'm the guy that you need to put your trust in to lead you for the rest of your life. Raising children is not a sprint. That's a marathon. Here in America, the typical time frame for that is 18 years. 18 years is a short time in retrospect, but when you're on the front end of that 18 years, that's a lengthy amount of time. Okay? So you got a marathon with these children. All the things that come with raising children. The ups and the downs of raising children. A lot of times as a parent, you're going to find yourself not knowing what to do in a certain situation. Shoot, do I discipline them like this? Do I give them a lot of grace here? It's a case-by-case basis, man, that you don't have all the answers to. That's a marathon. Whatever your life's dream is, whatever your life's goal is, whatever the purpose that God put on the inside of your heart is, it's going to be a marathon to get yourself to be equal to that dream, that goal, or that purpose. You know? Another cliche, Rome wasn't built in a day. Everybody's heard that a million times. But can we stop and think about it? Can we stop and think about how true that is? And give that cliche the respect that it deserves. So, my message here today is don't overlook the cliches, man. Don't overlook the familiar simply because it's familiar. Take a second sometimes to interact with the familiar because what you thought the price tag was on the familiar item, right? On the familiar idea, what you thought the price tag was on it, if you pick it up and examine it, you may find hidden, unseen value in the familiar. Okay? So I pray to God that made sense to y'all. It makes sense to me. I pray that people receive this message. I pray that they get something from it. I pray that they train their eyes to analyze the familiar and appreciate the familiar. And with that being said, I love you guys. Y'all be blessed.